How can we increase our mastery of the force through nutrition? What nutrition do we use to increase the force? Aaron Schrödinger wrote a very, very important paper in biology where he found that the organism needs to feed on negative entropy. But what is entropy? You see, according to the second law of thermodynamics, heat must pass from the hot object to the cold object. The hot coffee cup will go to room temperature. As entropy means that there's kind of a diffusion of energy to a balance point. If we take hot water, cold water, here we have some ink. As we apply the ink, we see that it diffuses in an entropic fashion, kind of a random fashion, without true quantic control. And in the hot water, the diffusion is a little faster. So what we can see now is that entropy requires no maintenance. It just happens. It's the second law of thermodynamics. Whereas negentropy requires a quantum biofeedback system. What is negentropy? Well, basically, life proceeds because there is an organized principle of a set of laws that seem to be a quantic-like laws that mean that life will fight against diffusion, against the second law of thermodynamics. In a living system, there's a quantic life force and a quantic life force working against entropy. This life force stops thermal decay, and the organism can remain at a different temperature than the room. This life force stops thermodynamic decay and gives an organized structure that allows life to exist. Because life exists because of a controlling of the atoms, the molecules, that they proceed in an orderly fashion to do things that accomplish life's goal. But if there is death, when a cell organism dies, it loses this fight against room temperature, and diffusion sets in. As we see here, the membrane has broken because this cell has died. And now there's diffusion. It goes back to the second law of thermodynamics. And the cell, the organism, loses its fight against room temperature. And then it becomes food for other organisms. Because there's a life energy. And while that life energy is there, other life will try to feed on that negative entropy. Because as Schrödinger said, there's a negative entropy. It's a device that the organism uses to maintain itself in an orderly fashion, to be able to fight against the sucking of a thermodynamic environment. So, without doubt, organisms should feed on negative entropy. We need foods that have that negative entropy. And the number one place we're going to find it in plants, because plants have that negative entropy. Plants are growing objects. And way back in the beginning of recorded history, we started to see people writing the Bible way back in Babylon. And they were writing the Bible, and they had a communication with God. They opened their spirit and had God consciousness coming in to guide them and inspire them. This is the belief of who wrote the Bible by the hand of God. And he told us that seeds, fruits, shall be our food. That these things which have the most amount of negentropy would be the best foods for us. And that way back in the Bible, back in Babylon, when the Israelites were taken captive, Nebuchadnezzar hired Daniel. And Daniel's men refused to eat meat because they knew that it didn't have the proper life force. They were inspired from God, and they used biblical food. They used a type of pulse, a type of bread that was made from different types of germinated grains. And one day Nebuchadnezzar challenged him and said, "My men eat lion, they eat meat, they're strong." And Daniel said no, his men ate pulse. And they went out into the field and challenged each other. And Daniel's men were much stronger, eating the pulse, eating the germinated seed bread, the germinated seeds, the sprouts. They had much more strength than the lion-eating men of Nebuchadnezzar. And God guided the men to write into the Bible this and other things. And basically, he was then able to tell us that the fruit will be the food and the seeds and the leaves for healing. The power of that life force to grow the controlled atomic molecular structure inside the plant, taking in the rays of the sun and the minerals of the earth, and making us the perfect blend of food. And we found that in the sprouts, there's a high amount of energy. And here we have broccoli sprouts, which contain 100 times more cancer-fighting agents than the actual broccoli. And here we see the sprouts. It's this life force. There's an enzyme inhibitor inside the seed and just a little bit of water. And it washes away the enzyme inhibitor and allows the sprout to happen. This is what Daniel had in sprouted bread that they used. And here we have broccoli sprouts, a very, very fine food that helps us in 1,000 ways and will give us energy, negative entropy energy, to fight against entropy, to fight against disease, decay, and aging, and to make us sharp and better for sports. That we see the beauty and the expansiveness of the plants that have that fiber and have that energy from the sun, that were made the perfect food, as our people from the Bible told us. And now we can get live spirulina, different types of algae. These things are living beings that have that negative energy, that entropy, as well as yogurt. Yogurt also contains it. Here we have fruits, and fresh fruits and vegetables contain that negative entropy that gives us life.
Animal cells are encased only in easily digestible membranes, which allow the enzymes in our gut to effortlessly liberate the calories within a steak, for example. On the other hand, plant cells have cell walls that are made out of fiber, which acts as an indigestible physical barrier, so many of the calories remain trapped. Processed plant foods, fruit juice, sugar, refined grains, even whole grains, if they've been powdered into flour, have had their cellular structure destroyed, their cell walls cracked open, and their calories are free for the taking. But if you eat structurally intact plant foods, chew all you want, you're still going to end up with calories completely encapsulated by fiber, which then blunts the glycemic impact, delivers sustenance to your friendly flora, activates what's called the ileal brake, which dials down your appetite, and frankly dumps trapped calories out the other end.
Plant fiber is extremely needed for our bowel flora to be able to make all the different chemicals that we need for life, all the different hormones. We need to have plants.
Those eating more plant-based appear to effectively be burning more calories in their sleep. The resting metabolic rate of those eating more plant-based may be 10% higher or more, a boost of metabolism that can translate into burning off hundreds of extra calories a day more without doing a thing.
And you see these plants, especially fresh plants, even sometimes cooked plants, but they have the different factors needed for life, and they have a life force. The synthetic chemicals do not have that. It's a pharmacological fact that a synthetic anything is an insult to the body. In order to get a patent, you must prove that your compound is not of nature. If it has a patent, it means it's unnatural. To get a patent, you must prove that it is not of nature. You made it. It never existed before. Then they can get you a patent. And when we look at the synthetic chemical companies, and we compare the natural versus synthetic, that the natural is superior. Most importantly, it has an energy factor, an energy given to it from that life force that the chemical companies do not understand. So we must avoid synthetic foods, the patented foods, avoid the high glycemic foods, the processed foods, the white sugars, foods boiled in oil, nitrates, in order to sharpen and get our energy, to increase the force, the prana, the chi, to follow the Tao and the Dharma, and to have the best control over our lives. Here's natural vitamin C on the left, crystallized, and synthetic vitamin C. The natural vitamin C has energy. It plays with the light. It has the electrons that are energy. The synthetic does not. There's no life force here. We have to understand that the 0-calorie sugars, these sweeteners, they have no life force. They destroy the life force in your bowel bacteria and they make disease. There's no life force in these synthetic patents. There's a problem here. This is sugar and life force free. Disease in a bottle. Organisms need to feed on negative entropy. They need to feed on the living quality of life. This is very important. In order to build your own force, to be able to build your own life, to have health, mental health, wealth, success, get off of all the synthetics and get onto natural negative entropy plants.